Hi, everyone. Welcome to Living with Dementia Roadmap series. This is our third session, Getting Help at Home with Community Resources. My name is Emily Kearns. I'm the coordinator for Dementia Friendly Baltimore County. And it is my delight to introduce to you our presenter today, Sara Kuhn. She is an amazing member of our Dementia Friendly Baltimore County leadership team, and she is the Community Relations Director at Inspirations. She'll tell you a little bit more about that later. She has over 20 years of experience in marketing and healthcare. After working for large companies for many years, Sara felt the need to follow her passion for helping families and serving the geriatric demographic, especially those living with dementia and Alzheimer's. Sara has worked with placement companies, assisted living communities, and adult day centers in Maryland. I love this piece in her bio. You can find Sara drinking her morning coffee with the residents, planning family events, or out educating the community on dementia and her mission. Besides that, she is also on the Alzheimer's Greater Maryland Walk Committee. And again, she's a really critical member of our Dementia Friendly Baltimore County leadership team. And she will be speaking today about home-based support options for families. Before she begins, I want to let you know a little bit about this series. As I said, this is the third in the 6-month series. The next one will be August 14th. We'll remind you at the end, where we will talk about the path to planning a move. But we are focusing on an important tool that this leadership team has put together, including Sara as part of this process. They have put together a Living with Dementia roadmap. And the roadmap actually has, let's see, Sara, do you have a slide you want to show real quick with the
Yep,
road?
I do have
Yeah,
a roadmap slide.
while I introduce it. Great, thank you. So everyone can see, we've put together this handout that's a resource guide for everyone living with dementia, for caregivers, care partners, for the public in general. It depicts a pathway that folks journey, even though we know that not one size fits all. The journey is quite unique because of our individual personalities and life experiences. But there are some similarities along the dementia experience. There are benchmarks, there are choice points where the individual living with dementia, as well as their care team, needs to pause and get resources to help assess their situation, where they are in the journey, and look at the resources that are available to help them make decisions for planning the next step. So this 6-month series that we're doing now and that you're participating in today looks at each one of these benchmarks, each one of these choice points along the way. And today, as you can see here, we are looking at number 2, adjustment and support at home. And you will see at each benchmark, each choice point, there is a QR code, and there's also a the traditional link that drops you down into a database to access resources to help you and your care team figure out, again, assess your needs, and also start thinking about your options for the next step in your care journey. So we will be speaking about this at the end too, through your questions and answers. If you have questions, if you don't mind holding them till the end, that would be great. You can also put them in the chat, and as Sara presents, I will be following the chat. And again, we'll open up to discussion, and then you can ask Sara directly your questions. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can put them in the chat, and I will ask them from the chat. So Sara, welcome. It's an honor and a delight to have you today. Let you take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Emily. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on our second stop on the roadmap. As many of you are on this call, it's because you're looking for resources, right? We all need to know that we have somebody in our corner, that we're able to kind of develop a plan for our family member. And we're hoping that as the Dementia Friendly Baltimore County gets out into the public and can be a better resource for our families. So thank you so much much for joining us. As Emily said, my name is Sarah. I do work in an assisted living right now. I'm community engagement. So I work with the families to find the right options for their loved one when it is time to make the decision to move to a community. And I'm just really happy to be presenting today. Today, we're going to be talking about caring for a loved one with dementia, home-based support options for families. So we're going to talk a little bit about the reality of home-based dementia care. Of course, our goals with anybody that we're caring for are comfort, safety, and dignity, right? We want our resident or our, sorry, I'm using assisted living terms. We want our family member to be as safe and happy with a quality of life as possible and maintain as much dignity and independence as possible. But it's when do we need to make those next decisions to make sure that the environment that we have at home is still appropriate for them. So our focus today will be support options that we can use at home. We're all on this call because there is we all share dementia, right? We all need to learn something or we're all advocating for somebody that we love. So dementia is a general term for memory loss and cognitive decline. It is unfortunately progressive and it does affect our thinking, behavior, and daily function. And then, of course, the umbrella, which I know is presented on our calls so far, but this is straight from the Alzheimer's Association. Dementia is the umbrella for loss of memory and other thinking abilities that interfere with our daily life. And then, of course, we have our types of dementia. So whether your loved one has a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or frontotemporal or mixed dementia, you still need to know what resources are available. And just as the map shows, everybody's journey is different. There could be two people with the same diagnosis of Alzheimer's, but the stages that they go through and the stages that your family goes through are going to happen at different times. So the purpose of us being out here as advocates to our families like yourselves is so that you know that you have support along the way. Emily already talked about the roadmap, so I'll very quickly go through it, but we are talking about adjustment and support. And the reminder is that this isn't linear. You may be wanting to look at some community options now before a crisis happens when you get a diagnosis. I think the most important part when you do receive a diagnosis is having a plan, knowing what is available, knowing what insurance can cover, and knowing your bandwidth. That's going to change daily. So we're going to talk a little bit later on also about family support to make sure that you know that you are not in this journey alone. Why does home-based support matter? Well, keeping our loved one at home is familiar, right? So they're familiar where the restroom is. They're familiar with where their clothes are kept. You're using common terms like comfy clothes at night, things that are going to be comfortable for your loved one as they're progressing through this disease. It does help maintain independence. They may safely be able to go to their dresser and pull out their clothes. We may install handlebars and grab bars and safety measures in the shower so they can safely take a shower with some hand-over-hand coaching or some direction from their loved one. Personalized and compassionate care. We all know the absolute best caregiver is ourselves. And the reality of the disease is that we cannot do it alone. And we'll talk about this later, but it is most important to always ask for help and know when we need to, rely on other measures to help us safely. And it can also delay and prevent transitioning to a community. There are a lot of reasons that families choose to keep their loved ones at home. It is different for every family. Finances could be a huge barrier. I think the cost of assisted living is always a shock to a lot of families as insurance does not cover transitioning to an assisted living. Home care is also private pay. So it's the more that we can do at home, the longer we can preserve those funds in staying with home. I apologize. Before moving into a community. Safety first. When you make the decision to have your loved one at home, there are some things that you want to make sure that we're taking care of appropriately. Removing clutter and tripping hazards. A lot of times with dementia, we're not going to be looking aware that there might be a shoe on the ground, that the sock is falling off of our foot. So really, we just need to make sure that there's clear pathways and familiar pathways for your loved one. As the disease progresses, some families find using labels and signs as for orientation appropriate. Maybe you'll put a bright orange sign on the bathroom door that says, Ken, this is the bathroom, or a night light. I was in a community once where the night light actually would shine an arrow to the bathroom door. So when a resident would wake up in the middle of the night, maybe disoriented, needed to use the restroom, they would see that arrow and follow the arrow into the restroom. Grab bars, of course, as our mobility starts to decline, that is very important. Maybe grab bars, especially in the bathroom, because we do want our loved ones to be as independent as possible. So especially in the shower where things could be slippery, you're washing your loved one and their foot goes, to have a grab bar is very important. And then a stove shut off device. That is very, very important. You're taking a shower, your loved one could decide to cook macaroni and cheese with no water in the pot. So we cannot be around our loved one 24 hours a day. So unfortunately, is that instant usually when we turn our back when a crisis happens. So the more we can do to prevent what might happen can really help alleviate a crisis in the future. Daily routines and predictability. A lot of families find that when you set a consistent time for meals, bathing, and activities, being on a schedule can really help our resident or our family member. And using visual reminders for calendars. So sometimes crossing off the date, starting the day by saying today is, July 10th, we're going to the doctor today. Keeping your loved one involved in your day-to-day activities is so important. They may not remember. They may ask you 500 times if today's the day you're going to the doctor. But when you can have a calendar, you can bring them to it and you can visually show. Sometimes that is very helpful for families. And also keeping items in the same place, especially for clothes, such as their dresser drawer. A lot of families will put labels on the dresser drawer. So Tom's socks, Tom's underwear. So that way, when you're allowing your loved one to be as independent as possible, but still coaching them on their daily routines, you can say, hey, Tom, let's go to the dresser. Okay, so this top one says, these are your socks. Why don't you open that up and take out your socks? So that is helpful for a lot of families, having the labels and also consistent activities. The main thing is to not be scared to ask for advice and help and guidance and support. There is a book that is called The 36-Hour Day for Caregivers. And I'm sure anybody who's on this call that's a caregiver is nodding their head right now. It is nonstop to care for somebody with cognitive decline. So it is so important, and we're so thankful that you're on calls like this and taking part in resources to be able to help you through your journey. Some in-home support services. Of course, we have home health aides. That is a company that you would pay that would come to the house for a certain block of time. They would assist with bathing, dressing, feeding. You do not have to be there when they are there. So they would come on a consistent schedule and they are trained, right? So they would be through a company. If you're having a hard time with agitation or behaviors with your loved one, not wanting to take part in hygiene practices, which is very common, sometimes somebody from an outsider can sometimes have some better luck with that. So home health aides. There are visiting nurses who would come in and manage any significant health or medication that needs to happen. So if somebody needed to come and actually disperse medications to your loved one or monitor some serious health concerns, a visiting nurse can come out. Occupational and physical therapy. This is fantastic. It's a great way to teach safe ways to do daily tasks. Your loved one may not retain all of the information that they're learning, but the therapists will also work with you. So that will go hand in hand. Safe ways to put on clothes for somebody who refuses to, make their arm straight for you to put the shirt through. There's also adaptable clothes. One of my family members, he loves to wear button-down shirts that are long sleeved. He owns a business and he wants to maintain that lifestyle and that appearance. So they actually have shirts now that look just like anybody in their 30s would wear, except it has Velcro. So the buttons are Velcro on the inside of the shirt. So we're able to give him that independence and that autonomy of wanting to dress appropriately, safely. It's easy. We don't have to manage any buttons. And then, of course, palliative care and hospice. So there are a lot of hospice companies that do have specific dementia programs. It does not mean that your loved one is going to be passing away tomorrow when you take part in some of these programs, but it does provide some extra services that work hand in hand with the families, and it's focusing on comfort. Palliative care is for the best options for the family member. And they are great support because hospice can also provide durable medical equipment, such as a hospital bed, over-the-chair potties, things like that, as well as a social worker, chaplain, and it's just a support system for you. It's an all-encompassing support system for you, but most importantly for your loved one as well. Respite care, taking a break. Respite is so important, especially for the caregiver. In-home respite care would have somebody come to stay at the house for an extended period of time, maybe a weekend or maybe a week, while you can either go somewhere else or just kind of go in your room and shut the door. Adult day programs. It's a safe daytime care outside of the home, but it's a day program. It is what I consider getting your toe in the water before transitioning to a community. Some are specific to dementia care. There is one in Baltimore County that is specific to dementia care. It's a fabulous program because many caregivers are working during the day. Dementia is actually being diagnosed younger and younger. I actually have 3 people in my community that are 61, 62, and 63, not even retirement age, and their spouses are still working. And prior to them transitioning to a community, they weren't able to be home alone. So something like an adult day program is going to give that engagement and safety for the person during the day while you can go grocery shop, while you can take some time to do what you need to do at the house or go to work. And then, of course, the short-term residential care stay. So some assisted living communities do have what they call like a respite room, where you would have your loved one move in for 2 weeks or a month, and it would be overnight support and 24-hour care at an assisted living community, not in your home. Of course, there's some supportive technology that has recently come out that is great for dementia care. There are medication reminders and pill dispensers that are automated. There's also video doorbells and GPS trackers. So if your loved one is living alone and you're checking in on them with a doorbell camera, or GPS trackers are great. My best advice is having multiple GPS trackers in under the sole of the shoe. That way the potential resident cannot feel the tracker under their shoe, because with dementia, of course, all of our senses are so heightened, they would notice. So my best advice is in every pair of shoes that your loved one owns, put a GPS tracker in there. A cell phone with a GPS tracker is great, but will your loved one always have their cell phone in their hand? Smart speakers for routines and music. Smart speakers are great, especially with Alexa. So many things now enable us to just drop in to another household. So if you needed to speak to your loved one and you were not with them at the house, you could say, "Hey, mom, I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, go stand by the front door, or she'd be able to speak back with you. And of course, music, right? When music is very calming for most people with cognitive decline. So if you're noticing that your loved one is becoming agitated or antsy, especially in the evenings, music can really be a wonderful resource to try to redirect some behaviors. And of course, emergency alert systems. Um, there are some home security systems that can actually have an alarm or a bell if the doors are opened at a certain time. So that can be appropriate for a family as well. Family and personal support. We preach it all the time, but the caregiver is just as important as the person that you're receiving care, that you're giving care to. So it is important to make sure that you have support as well as your family. My biggest piece of advice is have a plan. As soon as you can, create and execute a power of attorney document. Um, that way, there is a plan. You know exactly when your loved one is no longer being able to sign for themselves or make appropriate decisions. You already have that in place. Gather finances. How are we going to pay for home care if we need it? How are we going to pay to modify our home? What happens if something happens to the caregiver, right? How much does assisted living cost? So the earlier in your diagnosis that you can have a plan, the better, because usually you're making decisions in a crisis situation. So if family can have an open conversation, if there can be any support financially to the loved one, if you do need to bring in extra support that costs money, that is already kind of ironed out. Those details are already ironed out. So when the decision comes to have home care, to move to a community, to do an adult day, you know where those finances are coming from. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Share tasks such as meals, appointments, and errands. I know sometimes there's a lot of different family dynamics. Sometimes there's an only child. Sometimes there are no children and it's a spouse taking care of a loved one. But it is important that the primary caregiver tries to delegate and ask for help and communicating openly and regularly. Dementia changes daily, as I'm sure everybody on this call can agree with. Tuesday might be great. Wednesday, we're going hour by hour. And I think having conversations with your family about your loved one's decline and also their joys. There can be some beautiful things that happen along the journey, but communicating openly and regularly is very important. And also respecting each person's capacity to help. Um, like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of family dynamics. I had a conversation one time with two sisters about when is it the right time to move dad into a community. And dad was spending time with one sister for a week and then would transition to another sister for the week. So it was kind of going back and forth. And I looked at the sister and I said, I can't answer that question because it's different for everybody. For Joy, it might have been the fact that her grandson lives in the house who's 1 year old and dad was tripping over the toys and trying to cook dinner and putting puzzle pieces in the oven. But for Jill, it might have been the fact that dad was having bowel accidents. So everybody's threshold is different. And it's kind of respecting what everybody's threshold is, which is why it is so important at the beginning of that diagnosis to kind of have those conversations with any family support that you're going to have. So when the time does come to ask for extra support outside of the family in the home, everybody can be respectful and be on the same page. Taking care of yourself is the most powerful way to begin to take care of others. Being a caregiver is hard. There's no denying that. And one of the reasons that we are all advocates for those with dementia is number one, for the potential person with dementia, but also for the caregivers. One of the reasons I'm on the work team is because you sit in your doctor's office with a diagnosis 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you look over at your loved one and they're driving, they can feed themselves, they can go to the restroom, and you think, I can do this until you can't. And every day is hard. And that is why you also need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and utilizing the many, many resources that are available to caregivers to be able to directly support their loved one. Caring for you, know the signs of your burnout, and please remember it can be physical and emotional. Take care of your own health. Please do not put your health on the back burner. The only way you can adequately love your loved one is by making sure you are healthy. Seek emotional support through support groups or even personal therapy. Um, you have to be able to talk to somebody about your day-to-day trials and tribulations, and just know that it is okay to ask for help. We have a lot of resources available to families, and I talk about that in a later slide. When is it time to reevaluate staying home? Your safety concerns or frequent medical needs. Um, I always say just because somebody has dementia doesn't mean that they're stupid. They know how to open up a door. If you change the lock, they will find the lock on the top and open it. Or frequent medical needs that are beyond your control. Maybe a lot of falls, persistent urinary tract infections that lead to a lot of rehab stays that can definitely change the baseline of your loved one. Increased agitation, aggression, agitation, and wandering. Um, Opening up that door, mom goes and gets her mail every day and she comes back inside. There's no problems until the one day that there is. So the most important thing is making sure that we can keep your loved one safe. And of course, increased aggression. When somebody is suffering from cognitive decline, they cannot appropriately tell them their feelings. So if their stomach hurts, if they're tired because they were up all night, if the fire truck siren down the street is bothering them, they cannot kind of block that out like the rest of us can. And unfortunately, it comes out in the form of aggression and behaviors. We don't ever want any of our caregivers' safety to be put at risk, or the person that you're caring for. And of course, if your own health is suffering, if you are up literally 24 hours a day and your loved one is up all day and then you're taking care of the house while he's sleeping, you need to make sure that your health is your number one priority as well. Care needs exceed what's manageable. I think it's just like what we just talked about, frequent trips to the ER, frequent falls, and of course, aggression and wandering. And remember, the time to make the additional care decisions is different for every family and caregiver, just as I talked about Jill and Joy with their dad. There are many community resources. Our goal at Baltimore County Department of Aging and the Dementia Friendly Baltimore County, and all of my peers who this is what our passion is to try to make sure that everybody knows what the resources are. And this is just a small glimpse of what's available. But 100% the Alzheimer's Association has a helpline that is 24/7. And I have their phone number on the next slide. You can call them at 2 a.m. You can call them at 6 a.m. and a social worker will answer the phone and be able to give you guidance to get you through whatever situation that you're dealing with. Support groups for caregivers. Facebook has online support groups. The Alzheimer's Association runs support groups for different stages of the disease. They do have an early onset. They have ones for living in a community. Local churches, always reach out to your local church, especially the larger churches sometimes have caregiver support groups. And memory cafes. Memory cafes are something that's run through the Alzheimer's Association. Usually that would actually bring your loved one to a meeting, and you would be there as well. And I think the best camaraderie is other people who are also going through the same journey that you are. And Meals on Wheels or transportation programs. Sometimes it's hard just to cook spaghetti. So community resource such as Meals on Wheels is a program that would deliver meals for you and your family. And there's also transportation programs. So certain adult day programs, if it is just so hard for you to get your loved one in the car or to pick them up, there are transportations through mobility that are literally door-to-door service. And there's also private transportation programs that can help with that as well. And of course, Dementia Friendly Baltimore County, we are just the biggest advocates for those living with cognitive decline. And Maryland Access Point, MAPS, better known as, of Baltimore County, and I'm including their phone number. I refer people to Maryland Access Point almost daily for phone calls I get at my community. They can walk you through the process of who you need to speak to get any state funding for extra help for Medicaid if you should qualify. They have a list of resources and, of course, the community resource book. And then, of course, the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline. And this is their phone number here, or the community resource finder, also through the Alzheimer's Association. And I think the most important thing to say is I live by this quote daily, and it's one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, and 1 minute at a time. This is an extreme journey, no matter what benchmark per se you are on, to just remember that you got to get through the one day, right? And if the one day is looking so arduous, we're going to break that down into 1 hour, 1 minute. And I just remind you to just find the joy in every day and practice gratitude. It does change our outlook. But most importantly, as a caregiver, know that we're doing this for you, so that you can adequately love who you're caring for as absolutely long as possible. And that's my presentation.
Sarah, thank you so much. So at this point, we will open it up for questions. We'll start with those in the chat. And then we would invite you to actually share, Sarah, if you can stop sharing the screen, that way I can
Yep.
see everyone. Oh, Ethel, you have your hand raised. Go ahead, please. Ethel. Oh, Ethel's clapping. It's not a hand raise.
Oh, I'll take a clap.
Sorry,
Okay,
yeah,
thank
there's
you.
Ethel's applauding. Thank you, Ethel. So at this point, we will start the discussion part. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat, or Sarah will stop sharing her screen and you can
Yep.
raise your hand.
There we go.
Okay, great. So Sarah, there are two questions in the chat. The very first one says, is there from Kay, is there any general guidance for long distance caregivers?
Mm,
They live in Moncton and the mother-in-law lives in Bethesda. She's in her own home at this point with cameras, attending a day program, resisting at-home care, but she's safe at this point. So my thought is MAP and Alzheimer's Association, but what's
yeah.
your thought, Sarah, please?
No, I mean, I would agree with you. I think that is working in an assisted living environment. I have a lot of families that are in the same predicament per se that you are, is caring for a loved one, knowing that there's decline from far away. You have done what you can do as far as cameras in the home. Attending a day program is the most phenomenal thing. I used to work in one, so I will preach it all day until the cows come home, because a day program can also provide medical support. So making sure she's getting her medications, the nurse there can be communicating with you if there's any significant declines day by day. So it kind of gives you some nursing care and some insight, while you can't be there, and what you're observing on your cameras. The resistant for at-home care, I think the question would be, is she just saying, no, I don't want it? Or what is the resistant, right? Like, it's kind of how to navigate that hurdle, right, Emily? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is real important is the relationship, maintaining the trust. And so that's a dance, isn't it? As
Mhm.
dementia changes the relationship. But I think you really want to go to the emotional level when you're communicating and navigating decisions for change, and really check in, not about the details so much, because details sometimes for the person living with challenges are hard to follow. So if you start with a lot of details about, we're going to have this person come in on this day, that day, and is it okay with you? I'd say slow down and really go to the emotional level and acknowledge the resistance. Say, it sounds to me like you're scared, you're nervous. You want to be independent. So really focus on the emotions and working on that, calming the anxiety around it. And what some families I've seen have done is the first time a in-home person comes, they're there.
Yeah.
The care partner, the caregiver is there as well. So it's almost like a family meeting or whatever, a meet and greet. And then slowly backing away from, okay, the in-home service is going to come next week. You've already met them. I'm not going to be there. But anyway, it's really about this dance of relationship and really acknowledging the anxiety and the fear and the reason for resistance and giving that some air and validation. No one wants someone coming. Most of us don't want people coming to our home and knowing our business and taking over, right? So that's natural for all of us. Anyway, Sarah, I don't know. Does that resonate or how does that
No,
sound?
yeah, I agree with you, Emily. And I think too, it's all in the verbiage that we use when we talk to our loved ones, right? So, using the words, Mom, I need in-home care to come because you're having falls and you can't do the laundry, and I'm worried about you cooking. Those are a list of things that maybe your mom is gonna take as if she's having faults,
Yeah.
right? So if you can kind of flip the script of something that you know she's having trouble with, if her laundry is in the basement and she can't go down the steps, or she's not remembering to wash her clothes, is not using the word caregiver or an in-home aide, but maybe call her a maid, right? Something that you know that your mom might take to, because the reality is your mom in her early to mid stages is fully aware that she probably has some faults, right? And that is scary for her. It's the hardest part of the disease is when you're aware of your limitations. When it's farther along in the disease, they're not aware, right? So while it's harder for us, it's almost easier for them. But in this phase that you're in right now, I would just choose your verbiage. And I fully agree with Emily. I would have said the same thing. When the caregiver comes that first time, maybe even the second time, is you're kind of there to just kind of guide everything through, make your mom feel more comfortable. But the reality is it's if she doesn't want a caregiver to come because she doesn't think she needs care, she can verbalize it all she wants, right? So maybe just flipping the script a little bit to something that you know is a pain point for her. Nope, mom, they're just gonna come do the laundry. And I know you like to go on walks and it's beautiful, it's summer, so they'll go on walks for you because I can't be there because I have to work. So hopefully that's helpful, but if not, please add.
Yeah, and the other thing is you can always reach out to the Alzheimer's Association, as Sarah said, to role play, to get help with
Yeah.
specific scenarios. Because even though the map is kind of generic, we also say, as we said in the beginning, and as Sarah reiterated, it's really quite unique to each person's personality. The other thing I would say, I love the flipping the script, wording, Sarah, is that we value our independence so much, especially in our culture.
Mhm.
And one thing that has helped some families is to say, if you want to be independent and in control of your life, like we all do, then let's get someone to help you, because then you'll be more independent longer. So for example, I knew someone who wanted to be independent and refused to use a walker. And she fell and broke her hip, and then she was, using a wheelchair from then on. So the irony is, had she allowed this assistive technology, so to speak, this walker, if she allowed that to support her, she would have been more independent. So that's kind of the irony, and we can help them flip the script that way. If you let people come in, you may be able to live at home longer. So thank you, Sarah. Listen, the second one is this from Barbara V. What is the approximate cost for the assisted living respite? I don't know if you can speak to that range or if you want
Um,
to take
I
that
can
off.
give a range.
Okay.
Assisted living is my forte. There are two types of assisted living, private pay assisted living. I will say this is not going to be a talk on community care, but insurance does not pay for community living. Just so everybody is aware, it is unfortunate. I wish it was not that way. Communities are private pay. The way I describe the different types of communities is kind of like when we're putting our children in daycare. You can have your larger daycare centers, that is like the Goddard and the Young School, and then you can have, the neighbor down the street who has her license out of her house and she has, 5 kids. So assisted livings are that same way. You're going to have your large brick and mortar buildings that have anywhere between 30 and 200 people. Then you're going to have your smaller assisted living residence homes, which is a home that's been transitioned into an assisted living. I can speak for the larger communities. Usually it's going to be a minimum of 30 days. You're also going to need all of the medical paperwork, and you need to go through the process as if your loved one was actually transitioning permanently into a community. And you're going to be looking anywhere in between $275 and probably $350 a day. Some of the larger communities, of course, everything is locational, right? As far as, how much, like where you live, right? Obviously, Crofton is going to be more expensive than Towson. So keep in mind that that's a range. The smaller assisted livings, that is a home, they may be a little more willing to work with you because they're kind of like a smaller business, right? So that is the average price, but I would say probably no less than 250 to 270 a day. Now you would still provide their medications, you would still provide their incontinence products, but they would stay there for that 2 weeks to 30-day mark. And then you would bring them home at the end of the time.
Sarah, let me just clarify. I thought I heard you say minimum of 30 days, but just now you said 2 weeks.
I did. Some of the smaller communities
Okay.
might, if their census is low and full clarity, they might be willing to work with a family for 2 weeks. But the average, like the
Okay,
larger communities, is
great,
100% going to be 30 days.
great. Yeah, let
Um,
me, oh,
and
sorry.
oh, sorry. Hospice also, if your loved one does qualify for hospice, hospice also provides respite at a long-term care community for your loved one as well. I believe they do 1 week a quarter. Emily, does that sound correct?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I haven't heard that. That's exciting, or not
Yes,
exciting, but
absolutely.
interesting
So
resource. Yeah.
I'm not sure of, now your loved one would need to qualify, of course, for hospice. But hospice, I know for sure will cover through Medicare at a long-term care community, 1 week of respite. But I don't know what the interim is. I don't know if it's every 30 days or if it's every quarter.
Thank you for that. And on September 11th, just to let the participants know, we will be having someone from hospice speak, as part of this series. So join us for that, and they'll be able to speak more about that. The other thing I know is that I don't know if you're aware, Road Scholar, for example, has caregiver respite grants so that caregivers can travel for like a long weekend or a week on a scholarship through Road Scholar. It used to be called Elder Hostel. So you can reach out to Road Scholar and find out about their scholarship. And during that time, the caregivers I know have found residences to take their loved ones for that period. So there is flexibility, no magic wand, as Sarah is speaking about, but you can always reach out again to MAP, the Alzheimer's Association, Dementia Friendly at Baltimore County, MD.gov. I'll put that here. Any other questions? So these are from the chat, but please unmute and go ahead or raise your hand and ask your question.
I have a question.
Please.
Any suggestions for my sister's in the early stages of dementia, and right now she's trying to stay in her home. Her home has steps. All of her siblings, all of our homes have steps. So what would you suggest when you're in a situation like that? She seems to do better at her house because she's more familiar. but about, I guess, 8 weeks ago, she stayed at my house for a couple of weeks and she fell 3 times. Any suggestions about that? Right now, we're looking into moving her into an apartment on the first floor that would be closer to her family. But do you have any other suggestions for that?
Is her, I'm assuming the bedroom and the bathroom and so forth are probably on the second floor.
Correct. Correct. And even if she were to move to my house, everything is on the second floor. I do have a finished basement. But she would still have to go up and down those steps.
Wow, I like that. Kay in the chat said we tape the edges of the steps with yellow tape.
Oh,
That is something I have never heard of before, but what a fantastic idea. I'm adding that to my repertoire here.
okay.
That's really good. That's a good idea because that helps her visualize the outline of the step. You can't put a gate up because she'll move it, right? So I always say best laid plans until it's not. So, and moving her to like a senior apartment, is closer to you. It's going to be like moving her to your house, right? It's going to be still uncomfortable in a different scenario for her, but you will be able to check in more frequently with her as well, which would be good if she lived closer to family.
Right, I would be able to. We've looked at some daycare facilities. She visited my senior center, and so I could keep her busy here, but there would
Yeah,
be time, but it wouldn't be a matter of me driving an hour
that's
to
hard.
get back and forth. And we would move all her doctors and everything up here. What is the difference? We were just looking in general community apartments. What would senior apartments be listed under?
So there are certain, and Emily and Ethel, because I know this is in the source book as well, so feel free to interject. So there are apartments that like anybody can live in, of course. So there'd be kids running up and down the steps and so forth. But then there's also apartments that are geared specifically for 55 and over. And then there's also subsidized senior apartments, which would take part of her income, right? So the apartment is specifically for seniors, but it would take part of her income, right? So if she was a lower income, they wouldn't be charging her $1,900 for, her one bedroom apartment. But Emily just put in the chat the community resource guide. There is senior housing there, which is independent. So I want you to just know an apartment, even if it's a specific for seniors, she is 100%. There's nobody there to look out for her or to help her. So I just want your family to know that. Like, I think sometimes there's a false sense of security with the word senior apartment or senior living. It is just as if it's an apartment that you and I could live in with the front desk. Except the reality is that everybody's over 55. So I just want you to keep that in mind.
I do have the resource book, and
Good.
would it be listed under a separate category, senior apartments, or just apartments in general?
I it I
I
don't
don't
have
have it in front of me. I don't have, but you could follow up if you want to email me, we could help or
There's multiple options under housing. They have apartments for senior congregate housing, apartments to meet special needs,
Oh, good.
assisted living, different numbers of care, retirement communities, continuing care, senior housing, and then others housing resources in the book. So there's lots of options available.
Thank you, Ethel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Can
and
I add
thank
one
you,
thing?
Linda. The Park View are great. There are the ones on Taylor and Bel Air Road. I know exactly which ones you're talking about. So those are good apartments. So I appreciate that because I get families that ask. So I'll remember that.
Yes, thank you so much. I just wrote down the name of it so I can look into that.
Which area are you looking for, Barbara?
Well, I live right down the street from Franklin Square Hospital.
Okay.
So I would like to be able to ideally get to the apartments I looked at are the closest ones to my house with decent ratings, but
Yep.
they are a general apartment. But I would go, I guess, as far as 10 or 15 minutes, just to make it more convenient. And if an emergency happened,
Of course. I
And
believe
right.
there's some in Rosedale, that I just don't know the name of them.
Miss Barbara, oh,
Yes.
Also, in Perry Hall, there's some right off of Bel Air Road on Chapel. And there's also a phenomenal adult day center, right in Perry Hall that focuses directly on dementia and Alzheimer's.
I'm going
So
to interrupt just for a sec here. Sarah, if that's okay. Ethel, you were coming in?
yes, I would suggest that Miss Barbara contact our Maryland Access Point of Baltimore County. I'll put the phone number in the chat, but they'll be able to pull up a full list if you give them a zip code or an area that you're interested in, and then you can peruse the list and see what's nearby.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry to have interrupted, Sarah.
well, that's okay. I start talking because I can't stop. So I get it.
I know, no. Very helpful. And Ethel, thank you, thank you. Also, I just wanted to say in general, Sarah, tell me what you're thinking, but real important to consider when moving, with each move, with someone living with dementia, usually it's it's really hard. It's really hard, and the person experiences difficulty adjusting, not only in the beginning, but also there's oftentimes a marked decline because they're trying to navigate the new environment. So I think families should really consider, consider that. And I think if it's the first time with dementia in the families, we're looking for the perfect place, the perfect place. I know from personal experience as well as professional experience. And just to know that you have to weigh that search for perfection against the impact of the move on the individual's cognition. But Sarah, I don't know. What do you think
I
of?
would agree completely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just something to be aware of. I always tell my families anytime there's a significant change, especially with environment, their
yeah,
baseline is going to drop. And then it might come up a little bit, but it doesn't really maintain itself, right? And then the same with a hospital stay or a rehab
yeah.
stay. That decline can be pretty drastic. But they're never gonna really go back to what they were prior to that crisis happening.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Yeah. Or not clarification, but just additional information.
Agreement.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for Sarah? This is really helpful, Sarah, really fleshing it out.
Good.
Anyone else? I don't see any hands either. All right, well, with this, I'd like to wrap it up and thank Sarah so very much for your expertise and your support and your role on our leadership team with Baltimore County's Dementia Friendly Initiative. And I would like to invite everyone, as I said, again, to our next date in the 6-month series, which is Thursday, August 14th, same time. We'll be looking at the path to planning a move. So Sarah has focused on getting supports for staying at home, and then when we need to move, what does that look like? What are our options? And we've started speaking about that today. So it'll be a nice segue. So I hope to see you all on Thursday, August 14th. In the meantime, if you need support, please reach out to the MAP office, the Alzheimer's Association 24/7 helpline, also our caregiver program or the Dementia Friendly program. And again, Sarah, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's always a delight to see you. Thank you.